We're mustering the forces of Rohan and gazing into Palantir. That's right, it's the Lord of the Rings Circle of Conflict from Office Dog Games. In this roll and write for the One Ring, players command both the Free Peoples of Middle-earth and the Shadow. By rolling dice and assigning the results to various spaces on their boards, players will recruit iconic characters, muster the armies of Middle-earth, advance their fellowship towards Mount Doom, and attempt to hunt down their opponent's fellowship as well. At the end of the journey, the player with the most victory points wins the game. Setup begins with the One Ring board in the center of the table. It features a track along the border and 6 slots for dice. Place Gollum on the first space of the track and the dice on the slots matching their colors. Each player takes 1 player board placed in front of them. The board's fillable side should be hidden from other players. 1 battle board placed to the left of the board with the Gondor/Rohan side facing them. This board's info is public for all players to see. 1 reference card and 1 dry erase marker. Players each mark the Shire on the map on their Free Peoples board with a big ol' X. 1 player takes the lead player token and we're ready to start the game. Let's look a bit at the player boards. They feature 2 domains, the Free Peoples on the left and the Shadow on the right. A player's Free Peoples side will compete against the Shadow side of the opponent to their left, while their Shadow side competes with the Free People side of the opponent on their right. You'll see how this works shortly. Throughout the game, players will gain icons from dice or spaces on their board. They spend these icons to mark various spaces on the boards labeled with those icons. The information on each player board is not to be shared with other players. The information on the One Ring board and the battle boards is public. Some general rules for marking spaces. Tracks are marked from left to right. If a player marks a space with an icon, they immediately gain that icon and can spend it anywhere on the same side of the board where they acquired it. So if players gain an icon from filling out a space on the Free People side, they may use it only on the Free People spaces. Circle spaces can be erased from right to left to pay for various actions. We'll see some examples shortly. These spaces can be filled in again later. Square spaces are never erased, and some have action arches above them. If the space below an arch is marked, this action can be used immediately or later. When used, the arch itself is marked to show the action was expended. Gameplay occurs in rounds, each divided into 8 phases. Seems like a lot, but most of them are quick and some are even skipped. The phases: roll dice, Gollum Smeagol actions, allocate dice, use icons and take secret actions, Free People's public actions, Shadow public actions, battle resolution, and game end check. First up, in the roll dice phase, the lead player takes the 2 white Middle-earth dice as well as any activated nation dice and rolls them in the middle of the table. We'll talk about nation activation shortly, but in the first turn of the game, it's just the 2 dice. Then, in the Gollum Smeagol action phase, move Gollum 1 space on the track for each ring icon rolled. If a Gollum icon on the track is reached or passed, players will perform one of 2 possible actions secretly. Gollum action, where they mark all hunt spaces on their Shadow board, or Smeagol action, where they mark all resolve spaces on their Free People's board. In either case, they gain no icons marked on their boards during these actions. When all players have taken an action, each player announces which action they took. Each player who took a Gollum action now forces their Free People's opponent to announce the exact location of the Fellowship on their Free People's board. The player uses the map on their Shadow board to mark this new information. Next, in the allocate dice phase, each player secretly selects 1 Middle-earth die result to use on their Free People's board and the other die result to use on their Shadow board. They cannot use both dice on the same board. Then in the use icons and take secret actions phase, each player secretly uses those icons from the dice on their boards. They can be used in any order, and any spaces marked this turn with icons on them allow the player to use them immediately. Actions with the cloak icon indicate that action is taken in secret, meaning they won't necessarily be announced in the upcoming phases. When finished using icons and performing secret actions, players close their board and lay it down. Any icons not used are lost at the end of the phase. Let's glance at the icons. The boot represents the Fellowship moving around Middle-earth and the Shadow hunting for the One Ring. It also represents nations marching to battle. Character represents important characters joining the game. Time can be used as either a boot or a character. Horns represent the nations being motivated to join the war. Each nation starts out neutral in the war, and as the horn icon activates, they eventually become activated and finally motivated. More on this shortly. Sword represents different military units joining a battle. Armies can be used as either sword or horn. And finally, ring represents the influence of the One Ring on the world, and just affects the Golem board. Next, in the Free People's Public Actions phase, players, starting with the lead player and proceeding clockwise, announce any public actions on their Free People's board, marked with a campfire icon. After all of these are resolved, players do the same thing in the Shadow Public Actions phase, but for the Shadow's public actions. We'll learn more about these in a sec. Then if a battle is ready, meaning all 3 spaces of a march to battle track are full, then a battle resolution occurs. Otherwise, this phase is skipped. Finally, in the game end check, if any of the following conditions have been met, the game ends. The Fellowship has reached Mount Doom on a Free People's board, the final space has been marked on a corruption track on a battle board, or both battles have been fought on a battle board. If none of the game end conditions have been met, pass the lead player token clockwise to the next player and start a new round. Okay, that's turn flow. Let's take a look at the boards and some of the key actions of the game. Moving the Fellowship. This secret action is performed by erasing spaces on the resolve track from right to left. This allows the player to secretly move the Fellowship to a new adjacent location connected by one of these lines. The resolve amount must equal the number on the new location. They fill in the line, adding an X to the new location and erasing the old X at the previous location. Some locations have icons on them, which are immediately available to the player for that turn. Some rules about moving the Fellowship. They can only move once each round. They can never return to a previously visited location. Once the Fellowship reaches Mount Doom, the player must announce it in the next phase, triggering the end of game. Hunting the Fellowship. This public shadow action allows a player to spend spaces on their hunt track to attempt to locate the opposing Fellowship. By spending a number of hunt spaces equal to any location on the map, they may ask their Free People opponent if their Fellowship is present there. They must then announce either their Fellowship is not in the target location, which means the hunt was unsuccessful. They then declare how many locations away their Fellowship is from the target location, using the shortest distance. Or their Fellowship is in the target location, which means the hunt was successful. If the hunt was successful, the shadow player causes corruption. First, they announce how much additional hunt they will spend. The Free People's opponent erases resolve equal to the additional hunt spent, and the shadow opponent marks 1 space on their corruption track. If they manage to reduce the Free People opponent's resolve to 0, the Free People's opponent must announce it, and the shadow player instead marks 2 spaces on their corruption track. Use character. The player announces a character that has a ready public action and resolves the effect. Merry, Strider, and Boromir have these on the Free People side, while the Nazgul, Saruman, Wormtongue, and Shelob have them for the shadow. A player may use a character only once per round, even if multiple arches on that character track are ready. Activate or motivate nation. This public action has the player announce which nation they have alerted. The nation tracks show each nation's readiness, which can be neutral, activated, or motivated. When first activated, a nation's die is added to the pool of rolled dice starting in the next roll dice phase. Additionally, the marking player notes on their battle board that the nation is activated. They also gain 2 swords to be used for that nation. Once a nation is motivated, the player gains another 2 swords and now gains double the icons on the nation's die. Muster army. The muster tracks represent army units that can be mustered to increase a nation's army strength. Strength, which we somehow haven't talked about until now, is the sole determining factor of which side will win in a battle. When all the spaces of a unit are marked, during the public actions phase, the player may muster that unit, which adds that unit's strength to the total army strength of that nation in that battle. The strength is higher if the nation is activated or motivated. The player then erases all of the spaces for that unit, enabling it to be mustered again. The Elves units can add their strength to the Gondor or Rohan battles, while the Southrons and Easterlings units can add their strength to the Mordor or Isengard battles. Units cannot add their strength to a battle that has already been fought. March or raise commitment. The player announces their choice and marks the battle board of the matching side. Marching brings the battle closer to resolution. Once all slots are filled, the battle will be resolved in the battle resolution step. Commit increases the victory point reward for the winner of that battle. 1 VP is already marked at the start of the game, and 2 additional 2-point slots can be filled using commit. Now that we know more about the battle board, let's learn about resolving battles. The player who has marked the 3rd march to battle space is considered the attacker, and their opponent is the defender. The defender gains a bonus defense strength of 3. Each player then secretly and simultaneously does the following: marks any battle resolution character abilities they would like to use, calculates their new army strength by adding any character abilities used. Players temporarily write this number on their player board while calculating. Each player announces their full army strength and writes the number in their space. They also announce any characters they used during the battle. The player with the higher full army strength wins the battle. The winner circles the victory points, VP, at the battle based on the commitment level. If the player's army strength is a tie, neither player wins, and no VP are awarded. As Tolkien can tell you, war is unpleasant. Destroy the ring. This public action is simple. It ends the game. If a player has their fellowship located at Mount Doom, they must use this action during the Free People's action phase to announce the endgame trigger. Once the game ends, players tally their points from commitment points for any battles they won, locations where their fellowship visited throughout the game, marked spaces on the corruption track, and 1 VP for every 10 points of army strength at each battle. These points are added even if the player lost the battle, or if it wasn't even fought. And that's the basics of the Lord of the Rings Circle of Conflict. I'm Amy Dallen, this is Good Time Society, and you should give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, lend us your axe! Be sure to check out our Patreon for some sweet behind the scenes and bonus content, and come on back soon for more great games and good times.